In September of 2014, Tamika Brents, a female MMA fighter, stepped into the ring with her opponent Fallon Fox, who had transitioned from male to female at the age of 30. The fight lasted just 2 minutes and left Brents concussed and with a broken skull. In her own words, "I've struggled with many women, and I've never felt the strength I felt in a fight like that tonight. I've never felt so dominated in my life." Brents was then later criticized for being a sore loser. This particular situation stood out to me because it highlights the two main arguments that are made for why trans women shouldn't be competing with other women: fair competition and safety. So to what extent should safety concerns outweigh inclusivity in sports?
So for all the equality we fought for and for all the feminism forward propaganda we've had to endure for the past, 5 decades, we sure are stopping listening to women. A woman's like, hey, that was kind of unfair. I got my skull cracked in and I've been fighting for however long. And now we're like, yeah, but what you say doesn't matter because we need to be super inclusive. When
Would women speak for, like in a sport?
They have. I was watching a lot of different...
They would support it.
I've seen a lot of women support trans women in sports that are not contact in that sense. And there are women in certain sports that didn't even know the person was trans for, a decade. Then they've been friends for however long. So it's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, even we saw with contact sports, like she cracked skull 2 minutes, right? Like, that's insane. Obviously, at that point, do we stop and like, all right, so do we include trans women in this? And are there reasonable enough justification why we're not,
The argument really isn't about identity or about whether or not I believe you're a woman or not. It's whether or not I believe that you have a 50% advantage in strength or speed.
Exactly.
Over a sport.
I think I'm like on the same level with you about that.
It's a tough one.
Chris, as a male, what would you...
I would just say, then at what point, like, how do we draw that line? Do we pick and choose? Oh, if you like this sport and you're transgender, you can't play it. But if you like, water polo, you might be good. Or you like swimming, you might be good.
Let me ask a challenging question, though. So on my point about, if a trans woman was to take puberty blockers before they hit puberty, their testosterone and estrogen levels would be very similar to that of a woman, like very similar, especially over a decade of taking it.
Right.
Would they be allowed to compete?
That's another tough one,
like,
right? I guess it depends on the
where
sport.
I struggle with this is it really a male or female debate? Is it just the fairness that higher testosterone brings? And if that wasn't there, would they be allowed to compete?
There's some sports we've actually banned like certain type of gear, whether it's steroids or whether we banned a shoe that can make you quite a bit faster over someone else, a 1% or a 2%, right? So 1 or 2% is what makes that, like in terms of Olympics, is what makes that difference for winning. And so when we're talking about a 15%, 20%, 30% advantage, that's what we're looking at.
I don't know. I'm not fully convinced because I do think that there is a level of, if that was the same, if it's the fact that they're just males playing female sports, originally males, if it's a level playing field, what I'm hearing is that's okay.
But then how come we just haven't melded the cis women and the biological men into a singular sport already?
Well, because then I do think that there's a level of, my point is if they took puberty blockers and
early enough.
Yeah, early enough. Chris, I mean, I don't know if you disagree with me or agree. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have a problem with someone transitioning in puberty, so I can't even begin to go there on this idea. But I guess your concept is, okay, like let's assume a woman took enough testosterone that she had the same, because we're talking about test levels, as a male, could she go play? And like the answer is I'm sure it can be done and it's not happening. So there's biological differences beyond hormones.
And if there wasn't, then yes, we would have the females who have transitioned to men playing much more male sports if there really was a level playing field that way.
So okay, now, and Karolina, I want you to answer this question. From a level of just trans women being bullied and being completely rejected and discriminated against in that sense, first of all, one, we could argue, is that discrimination? Well, that's a whole other topic. But how do you think we can allow these trans women to feel more appreciated?
Yeah, I mean, like if we're just saying let just trans women stay in the male sport, and then we're concerned about safety concerns is another thing that happens a lot of times when we're talking about transgender people. how are we talking about that? We're not talking about their safety, so we're completely dismissing it, right?
So what things can we do real quick? We've got about 10 seconds here, Bianca.
I mean, inclusion is important. Obviously, there are some sports that are not contact that I think that, mental health in the trans community is seriously a big concern. And so some of these teams that they're on that are female-based do help them survive longer in terms
Right,
of mental
fair,
health. Yeah,
fair.
like.